Hello and welcome to the TGH College Hardwood Podcast. I am Joe. With me is Greg, as always. Here to talk about the last week of college basketball and preview the next week. Greg, it is March. There are teams who have punched their ticket for the big dance. There are some really cool stories, fins up, and there are some other things going on. So, first of all, Greg, how you doing? How's the March been treating you with these games and what's going on?
Well, it's starting to feel magical. We've already had a few things here and there that have happened, especially in some of these lower conferences, and we won't really touch on every game or go into detail on those tournaments and whatnot. But you can already feel it. There's we're at the calm before the storm, and the calm is pretty stormy.
Yeah, so due to some schedule stuff, we're gonna be have a show that is a little bit on a shot clock, but we're gonna get into everything here. But honestly, it is the end of the regular season. Some of these games at the end of the year don't matter as much, so we'll recap them. We still already know how we feel about these teams, and then we'll also, do our teams who can win and do our picks for the conference tournament. So we'll go through it quickly. Greg, before we get started with any of that, the biggest news in college basketball: Caleb Wilson's out for the season, thumb injury, broken thumb, trying to come back from his injury, and just terrible luck for UNC. It's kind of a prelude to a conversation later that takes him from a team that I thought maybe we keep in for teams who can win it all. Not saying that they'd be my pick or even be a pick for a Final Four, but now it's their best player by a mile, even though they have some other good players, and it's tough. That's what the part of March that sucks is there's so many guys like him, JT Toppin, Richie Saunders, who are out for this March Madness. That just it feels like there's not as many years where that happens.
Yeah, that was my only reaction. Is kind of what you said at the beginning. That's just brutal. I mean, the guy is literally coming back from a broken hand and breaks his thumb in practice right before the tournament, right as he's coming back. The day before or days leading up to. I'm sorry, I think it happened on Thursday, and the Duke Carolina game obviously was on Saturday. But I mean, we started to get whispers throughout the week of hey, he might actually come back and play in this game, and then it
Mhm.
just like that, and he's out. And I'm with you. I mean, it really notches down their ceiling quite a bit. Um, Hubert has obviously done a good job. I mean, with the team this year and whatnot. Kind of maybe quieted some of those fans that were ready to get rid of him a little while ago. But um, I mean, there's just not really much that can replace it. There's nothing on that roster that can replace him. He was you know, in the past. There's been games where he's been the only one that's kind of held them up and kept them going. Um, so just
Yeah.
not getting to see him in March in the bracket is a bummer.
Definitely is, and yeah, Greg, it just goes from a team that, again, would have I don't know if I picked them to win, the whole thing or go to the Final Four, but they would have been on our list probably still after this week. To now it goes to like kind of like the way things we talked about Kentucky earlier in the year. Like, could I see them winning 3, 4 games in a row? Sure. Could I see them doing much more than that? No, it's just too tough. But yeah, and again, we're going to be thankful for the stars we do meet. There's some smaller conference guys we've gotten to watch this week who are stars that'll be possible big stars this March, but also we'll see some other guys step up too. And that's the silver lining is we'll see how these teams step up and prove what they can do without some of their star players. All right, so let's go to our recap of last week. We'll start it off on Monday. Arizona beat Iowa State 73 to 57. Now Koa Pete's back. He only scored 4 points in this game. Kobe Awaka, though, Greg, still, I mean, going back to being off the bench in this one, 10 points, 15 rebounds. The bigger concern here, Greg, because Arizona, I think, we've already talked about, yeah, they don't shoot a lot of threes, but they still win games. Is just Iowa State kind of fading down the stretch. They lost 3 of their last 4. They only scored 57 points. We talked about their offense stalling. They've also scored their other loss before their 3 out of the last 4 was against TCU like a month ago. They scored 55. It just seems like once every 4 or 5 games, it just seems like that offense just doesn't play as much as well as they should, and kind of stalls out at different times. And while they're a team that's still going to be on our list to maybe win the win the NCAA tournament, I feel like that's definitely giving me pause for how far I will take them.
Yeah, it definitely makes you a little concerned for their what their actual ceiling is. I'm with you. They probably remain on our list, but giving you pause is and they go on this weekend and they dominate I think it was Arizona State or something that they who did
Hmm.
they
Yeah, it was
who
Arizona State. Yeah.
and they put up almost 90. I mean that's the thing is I think you're right is just they're liable on offense to just put up a stinker here or there. And obviously, starting next week, it only takes one of those and you're done.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sad part. I'm hoping that they can have a good March, as there are some players on the team I like. I do wonder if they just needed like one extra guy or something that we can really trust to have on that team to kind of get them a bucket when they need it. And we'll see. I mean, I'm not going to rule them out as a team I picked to the Final Four. It just depends on how the bracket shakes out. But it's definitely one that I do have some concerns. But as we go on, Greg, there's more teams that we have concerns about too. So we'll keep it moving. Oh, go ahead.
I
Sorry.
mean, if you flip this on its head, and I know you kind of alluded to this, but you look at the Arizona roster, and it's been. I think we kind of know who the lead group of guys is, but at different times, first game of the season it was Koa Pete putting up 30, and Braden Burries did almost nothing for a couple of weeks, and Jaden Brett. It's like they have the ability with the way that roster is compiled to have some guys have an off night or even multiple off nights in a row, and offensively and defensively, they're still fine. Yeah, it's concerning that we've seen just we saw so much more from Koa Pete early in the season, and he's been kind of here and there since then. But I still watch these games and think he affects the game in other ways than just putting the ball in the bucket. He can take some tough defensive matchups and stuff. So uh, it's definitely kind of the opposite story for Arizona than it is for Iowa State. It's where it's like, hey, our concerns are, we have mild concerns with them, and they're kind of propped up by other pieces on this team.
Yeah, and that's like you said, we've talked about it a little bit. Like they have those seven-ish starters. Toby Walker steps in, and when Kobe Pete's down, and now Kobe Pete's back, and still not playing, as well as he used to. But who knows? I mean, like you said, Greg, in 2 games from now, when we get to the Big 12 tournament or even in the NCAA tournament, maybe Kobe Pete's the one who shines when they try to shut down some of their other options. So it's a nice thing to have there. Let's move on to Tuesday, Greg. Couple games to go over there. Georgia gets the win over Alabama. This is a game that they win. 98-88. It is important to note, Greg, that Catchings had 32.6 rebounds for Georgia. That was huge for them. Philon had 26 points for Alabama. But in terms of like the larger scope of it, this pretty much punched their ticket to the NCAA tournament. They're not like really on the bubble, but now with that win, and then they also beat Mississippi State on Saturday. They are now 10-8 in conference, or 22-9 overall for a team that at one point in the last couple of weeks had lost 5 out of their 6 games. They went on a spree, beating Kentucky, Texas, losing to Vanderbilt, beating South Carolina, beating Alabama, beating Mississippi State, and now this is a team you will see in the NCAA tournament.
So, Joe, the only thing I want to ask is, does this change your mind at all about Bama? They were on their own, what, 8, 9 game winning streak. They lose a
Mhm.
road game to an NCAA tournament team. They go on over the weekend and they beat a rival. Granted, it was at home in Auburn, but in a conference like this, I think you're liable to get caught. And it's not even like they got blasted. They didn't shoot the ball poorly. They just, it just didn't go their way. But I feel like there's still been times where it's been a roller coaster with this team, and it's been up and down. I know they had like a lost 3 of 5 or something at some point in the middle of the season. Now, granted, they've been pretty good since that blowout loss to Florida. Which includes the overtime game against Arkansas. So I don't necessarily think this changes my opinion of Bama, but it's still, if anything, it kind of slots them where I already thought they were. Like they're probably a second tier team with the ability to get hot.
Yeah, I think what you said is right. It's second tier kind of puts them to where they should be. I think people maybe overestimated how good the team was based on their winning streak. And like, I'm not knocking them for losing this game. They were due to lose a game. This is an NCAA tournament team on the road. But I think more so like the same issues that I had with them earlier in the year about, maybe not being quite the quality 3-point shooting team that they typically have, and maybe not having the stars that they typically have. Like this is a team that last year had Mark Sears and Grant Nelson, and now that Phylon is great, but I feel like there's just not as much depth, not as much shooting as last year's team in terms of their star players, and that's tough. So I'm with you. I think they're a team that I'm probably not going to pick to go to the Final Four. I think that they could get hot though, and that is definitely like if you're talking about ceilings. I think that Final Four is probably their ceiling this year, even though I'm probably not going to pick it. All right, so let's go to the other games of that night. Kansas and Arizona State. Arizona State gets a big win, 70-60 over Kansas. This is a game, Greg, that is kind of funny because all the reports are saying Bobby Hurley out, and that's probably warranted. But he had a couple of big wins this year, and that's good for him. And for Kansas, it's the same old, same old. Can Darren Peterson fit into this team? He went 3 of 18 from the floor. He went 2 of 11 from three. And now I think his game on against Kansas State on Saturday was better. Like it very much is a question of like, is this team going to have all the time to gel together and to be good and reach this ceiling that I still think is very high, but it definitely gives you some question marks again.
Yeah, there was a lot of curious things with this game. It was a game on the road. Bill Self gets ejected. Like I don't know. It's just strange. Like this team can't stay out of weird headlines and weird results. I don't. You want to talk about teams that have been roller coasters? Like it's here's case A of teams that have just been up and down and dealt with drama and everything on and off the. It's just a
Yeah.
very strange situation. And at the end of the day, you look up and down at the roster and you're like, okay, there's a lot of talent, especially in the starting five, not a lot of depth, but what they have, to start the game on the court is pretty darn good. And regardless of the result of this game, like it's just like you always got in your head, it's like that, yeah, but Darren Peterson, and we know at times when he's not been able to play, the other guys have been electric. So I think what we've discussed with this team is like the floor can be low, but like you kind of said, it's like where is that ceiling? Because it could be astronomical.
Yeah, this is like the team that, like, I know I said it a couple weeks ago, Greg, that like there's so many teams in this tournament where I don't know whether to pick them to lose in the first round or go to the Final Four, and that is something that while I don't know if the bubble teams from the power conference teams are great, I think there are some that could pick off team like Auburn beat Florida this year, right? But like there might be more chaos this year just because the teams at the top, like like a Kansas or like some of these teams who are in the top 25 might be able to be picked off because they do have these ups and these downs. So I'm hoping for more. I think the top three, maybe three teams in the tournament. What is it? Michigan, Arizona, and Duke all finished 29-2 after Michigan's win today. Like maybe they won't get picked off, but I think there's some room for some upsets otherwise. Not based on what the teams on the bubble are doing, but based on what those teams are. Like the second, third, fourth seeds maybe just aren't as good as maybe some of the other years. All right, let's go to the other game on Tuesday, Greg. We talked about this last week. Nebraska was on the West Coast. They stayed on the West Coast. They lost this one bad, 72-52 to UCLA. Again, big for UCLA. Trying to punch their ticket to the big dance here. So they got 20 points and 7 rebounds out of Trent Perry. And this Nebraska team, I'm not too concerned. This is a West Coast trip. I'm not too concerned about them. It is obviously closer to Nebraska than a lot of other Big Ten teams, but definitely has been feeling like they're a team that has done well and like they did well at a certain point and they beat some good teams, but certainly in the last month and a half or so have started to lose some games. And they played good teams, don't get me wrong. Losses to Michigan, Illinois, Purdue, Iowa, UCLA. And they're right now, Greg, they're tied with Iowa going into a possibly overtime right now as we're speaking. We're recording a little bit earlier this time, but that's the concern is they're playing good teams. Even if Iowa beats them, I think it's another good team. But they're dropping some of these games that maybe make you question some things.
Yeah, but I mean, unless something drastically changes come Big Ten tournament, like Iowa takes a really bad loss, even though that's at home, that's going to be a quad one game. So they've taken no losses outside of quad one, and actually, if you look at some of these websites, they do like a quad 1A, quad 1B. They have no losses outside of like the top half of
Yeah.
quad one. And that includes some fantastic wins on the road at Illinois, at home against Michigan State. You know, I mean there are some top tier wins on there, and they really haven't lost. You know, any games that they shouldn't have. I do almost feel like maybe we'd look at this differently if they didn't start like 16 or 17-0, and then hit a rut where it's like, all right, yeah, they lost 3 of 5, but like you said, that included Michigan and Illinois and Purdue, like and now they go out on a trip out west and they lose badly to UCLA, but we kind of already know uh, what that means. They at least got USC on their trip out west, so they didn't lose both games out there. Um, I long term, as far as picking a champion, I still feel like this is kind of be in my Bama kind of tier where it's like their second tier, and maybe if the bracket breaks the right way, I might look at them, but they're not going to be one of my top picks to win the title. And Joe, this is kind of where I got to was, man, I was going to be worried about slimming us down to 10 teams, but I think we're going to end up with 10 teams, and maybe the last two are going to be like by default, we have two in, and they're really good teams,
Mhm.
but just the kind of the top elite teams have separated themselves that much.
Yeah, I think these last couple weeks specifically, I think after, the NFL football season, last 3, 4 weeks have been such a big separator for some of these teams. They're getting obviously more into conference play and the schedules. I think they definitely backload them at different times, and that makes it so it's a little bit more clear. So again, we'll get to that conversation about teams you can win later. We'll try to get a couple more teams off the list and then try to get down to 10 by next week. But yeah, that's definitely a good point. All right, so we're going to go to the weekend, Greg. First, I know it's not on the outline, but Miami, Ohio completes the undefeated regular season on Friday night. I was at a bar watching it. The bar was going nuts. It was a awesome basketball game. There was some bad officiating, but man, it was so cool. Rivalry game. Miami, Ohio beats Ohio on the road. Now, Greg, just really quickly, because I know we don't have a lot of time in this show, I think that undefeated regular season locks them into the tournament, no matter what happens in the MAC tournament. I think if they go in with one loss, that's fine. But that's kind of my interpretation. So I felt like maybe we should just point that out. I don't know if you feel any differently, but just point out that they probably did enough to get an at-large bid, even if they lose to UMass in the first round of the MAC.
I'm with you. I think there's absolutely, especially if they win that UMass game, I think there's absolutely zero question. But there, in my opinion, I'm with you. There shouldn't be now. You know, the most they end up with is one loss, and it's not like they're in. I get it. The schedule is light, but we've got some of these really, really good teams that also have quad 3 and 4 losses. So going undefeated in those quadrants is not like, it's not super easy. You can go on Twitter and see someone, because college sports fans are crazy. Someone literally filed a Freedom of Information Act to see who Miami scheduled, and there are some decent teams on there. I don't know if it's better or worse for them. Like I don't know if they had played those teams and lost one or two of those games, if they'd be in a better spot. The fact is they won every game that was on their schedule. Yeah, 3 of those games were non D1 teams, but the rest of them, I mean, that includes Akron. There are some decent teams that they played. This was obviously a tough environment. I was with, I wasn't with you, but I was watching. We were out at relatives this weekend, and especially towards the beginning of the game, it was a tense atmosphere. Like you could
Mhm.
you could feel it, you could hear it coming through the TV. So the officiating was less than desirable. They get the job done in overtime, and this team does feel a little. It's almost with some of the results that we've seen from them in the last couple of weeks, where it's overtime and 2 point win and 3 point win, a touch of magic, a touch of destiny. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's probably a larger discussion to be had. Just quick point. You're right. They tried to schedule teams. Again, I would love for see them to like lower the buy game offer, like take some less money, be like, we'll play you anytime, anywhere for whatever price. But at the same time, maybe it's just the net system. If they're and I agree, like maybe they have trouble scheduling and teams don't want to play those quad 3, quad 2 games, they'd rather just get those easy quad 4 games. Maybe it's time to look past the net system, Greg. It's something we have continuous complaints with. I mentioned today on Twitter the RPI system was something that people complained about. But at the very least, teams would try to schedule good teams. Like teams would try to schedule Miami because they thought Miami would be a good MAC team and they get a lot of wins, and it's based on win percentage. And that's I think that's a better system personally. I don't really care about the efficiency. I don't care if Miami's winning by 40 points. If they're getting these wins, that's all that matters to me. And that's what's made this season so much fun is kind of been sitting on the edge of their seat and having so many close games and still coming through. It's been a really fun way to do things. So we'll save some talk about the selection committee and how they can do things better after, especially last year with all the issues they had. I'm sure for when we have Selection Sunday show next week, Greg. But let's move on to Saturday. Marquette beats UConn. Marquette hosts them. They win 68-62. Some bad offense by UConn. Again, some questionable officiating, but you should really never have to blame the officiating in a game where Marquette has 12 wins. Dan Hurley went nuts on a call that actually didn't go against his way, so that was fun. But this is, I tweeted this out too, Greg. I just felt like team has never been a national title contending team in my eyes. They're missing something. I think Silas Demery's a good point guard. I think Solo Ball is a good guard. They just don't quite have the star power of past teams. Now I know not to be against Dan Hurley, but when I said that Alabama can lose to Georgia and they were due, and obviously they have more losses than UConn. That's a little bit different when they're playing an NCAA tournament team. This Marquette team is bad.
Yeah, I want to disagree on some of it. I think there were times this season where I thought this might be a national title contender team. I'm not necessarily sold on that yet. Like, I'm not selling them as a national title contending team yet. I think they have been awesome. I think them being in the Big East and the Big East being light does them no favors. But you got to remember, they played Arizona really well. They beat Florida, who has looked nothing but awesome over the last 2 months or so. They beat Illinois, so those are some really good wins. I just don't know if maybe I don't know. I hesitate to say it, but almost like the Gonzaga effect, where it's like they're just not playing quality competition day in and day out. And I get it. Hurley is a fierce competitor, but it's easy to let your foot off the gas when you're consistently playing teams that you should be better than. I'm going to say that you probably disagree with that. They're probably not heads above, the rest of the Big East, if I'm understanding what you're saying. In terms of them as not a national title contender. So you probably wouldn't agree with what I'm saying, but I don't know. I just still feel like there were parts of this year where they just looked awesome that maybe hasn't been so much lately. But if we walk into this next week and they just absolutely obliterate their games in the Big East tournament, it's going to be enough for me to say, hey, I might buy in on this team getting the bracket to break right and maybe ending up in the national title game. I still feel like there's enough other power, options out there that I'm probably not picking them. But I hesitate to say there's no scenario at this point where I'd be picking them to win the national title, even after this loss.
Yeah, I think I'm not taking off their teams that can win the national title list this week, but I would say it's like gun to my head right now, Greg. I'm thinking like Sweet 16 is where I'm probably slotting them. I don't know if I'd go much further than that, and that's kind of where it is. Like I don't know. We'll see if something comes of it. We'll see if some of it maybe they have a good Big East tournament, like you said, and they're going to be the 2 seed in the Big East tournament. St. John's ends up winning that conference, which is notable. But that's something just to watch this week is can they get back on the right track? You're right, getting up for every game is tough. Gonzaga's used to it, and obviously they dropped a game to Portland, but usually they take care of business in their conference. With the loss to Creighton at home and the loss at Marquette, it's just like I don't know if they lost both games to St. John's, I'd be like, okay, that's a little bit worrisome. But yeah, I'm with you. I'm not taking them off the list yet. I don't think they're going to be my national championship pick. I don't think they're going to be in my top 5, but I'm not like totally ruling them out either.
I still think that the weirdest feeling is St. John's being the Big East regular season. That just feels strange to say and think with where we were, with how that narrative went throughout the season. That is an odd feeling. And I mean, to be fair, that comes from UConn having losses, at home against Creighton and then at Marquette. Like those are both games they should win. So it obviously also includes the loss to St. John's, but like they take care of business against teams they're clearly better than. You can have a discussion about how much better than, but are better than at a minimum. then we're not having this conversation. It feels
Mhm.
strange with the way things broke this season that we look up and if you said in the preseason, of course, you'd be like, yeah, sure. But with the way things have gone from week to week with that team, it's just I don't know. Maybe it speaks more to where we're at with the Big East than anything else. But that's off season talk. So for now, I'm not ready to sell on UConn as a national title contender, even though I've kind of sold on St. John's. I think we took St. John's out of our teams that can
Did
win. Correct? Okay,
we
yeah.
did, we did. But yeah, well, I'm with you. That's that again, the Big East tournament is something I will watch, and it'll be something where people won't have a lot of TVs on it because it's going to be, St. John's and UConn, and hopefully dominating it and making it a good Big East title game. But um, just seeing how they play, I think it can be big for them. All right, we'll move on to Vanderbilt beating Tennessee, Greg, 86-82. Now, remember, Data Ment did not play for Tennessee. Latest reports say they expect him back for the SEC tournament, which is huge for Tennessee's chances in that tournament, even beyond. This is a game where Vanderbilt really needed it, Greg. They had lost coming into the week. They had lost 3 of their last 4, lost that game to Kentucky. Then they beat Ole Miss. They beat Tennessee to kind of get things back on the right track. Tyler Tanner had 25 points in this one. He's been a great all around point guard, also had 2 steals. That is something he's been doing well all this year. And Tennessee, maybe, I mean, you hate to say it, Greg, but like sometimes when guys end up leaving, you get other guys step up, and that's what they've needed all year. They needed that third guy to step up. So without Nate Ament in there, Jacoby Gillespie had his 17. Maury Evans had 24. JP Estrella had 20 points, and yeah, I mean um, it's not good to lose games and there are no moral victories, but maybe that's something that they can work on once Ament does come back.
Yeah, I think regardless of who was or wasn't playing for Tennessee, um, I like this result for Vanderbilt, and I want to focus a little more on them. Duke Miles has scored in double digits every game since he's come back from injury in late February. Tyler Tanner continues to be awesome. We know there's other pieces on this team that are good. I'm still comfortable knowing, okay, we took them off our teams that can win the national title, but this is a fun team to watch. They play good ball. I'm happy that they're going to be healthy coming into March Madness, coming into the SEC tournament because I think this team has a chance to make a dent. What that looks like, I'm not exactly sure, but with them being healthy coming into this point of the season, I wouldn't be surprised if I looked up and they were in the second weekend. I think that's probably their ceiling is a Sweet 16. Obviously they could also lose the first day, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'm with you. Good to see that. Good basketball by them, and just plenty of guys who can make shots, like you said, with Duke Miles, Tyler Tanner. Greg, let's keep it moving here. We got Wisconsin and Purdue. Purdue is a team that just continues to struggle down the stretch. Nick Boyd had 23 points in this one. Um, win 97-93. That's again big for Wisconsin. John Blackwell also had a big game, 25 points. But it is, it is a time that Purdue's offense played pretty well, but defense couldn't stop anyone. As guards, covering can sometimes be an issue. And yeah, they like we said last week, Greg. Like, don't even know if I'm ready to take them off the list this week, but I would be shocked if they win a national title the way they played.
I would say they're probably on the cut line for next week, depending on what happened. And they may have win a game or two in the Big Ten tournament, and we may still end up cutting them just by default and by process of elimination, looking at others. But this isn't even a game where we can say, oh, Fletcher he do 6 of 9 from three, provide he was the leading scorer. So I mean, pretty much everything was going. It's just the defense just it wasn't good enough. It wasn't there. And I think that's the thing that gets me is like even when everything is kicking for them on offense, they can still get beat like this. Because that's been the concern all year for me is like, well, if everything on the offense is kicking, this is a completely different team. If Fletcher
Mhm.
Lawyer is producing, it's a completely different team. And here we are, they're at home, and it's the defense. So it really does make me sit and kind of take a hard look at what do I actually think this team is? What do I think their ceiling is? Probably a very high floor, probably a lot better than most, but it, the ceiling is probably a lot lower than I want it to be. Just again, I get stuck on the core three dudes that have been there for years now, and they're good players, but maybe just not good enough to be a national title contending team without Zach Edey.
Yeah, it could be it as sad as it is, as sad as maybe we want to see some more development from them, but it's tough to kind of slate in maybe them. They could probably win a game, maybe two in the tournament, but like you're right. Like how much farther would anyone be willing to put them in the bracket if they're not a Purdue fan? I just don't know. All right, next one up, Greg. Florida beats Kentucky 84-77. It was much uglier at some different points, but Kentucky experts are going down early and coming back and making it look closer than it actually was. They were down 11-0 to start the game. Kentucky was. Otega Oweh had a good game for Kentucky, 28 points, but this Florida team's rolling on all cylinders. If someone said, "Hey, Florida is the favorite to win the tournament," I'd have no arguments right now. They are just very, very good. Thomas Hall deserves some consideration for SEC Player of the Year, even if Darius Acup wins it. It has been just such a good. Not a fan of Florida, but it's been so fun to watch their front court dominate for most of the year, and then their guards really figure it out. Xavier Lee's coming along. Boogie Flan's still great. So it's been like a very. If you're talking about guys who've done a good coaching job from the start of the year until now, I think Todd Golden's definitely on that list.
Yeah, and I mean, you could say, oh, Klavsar may be taking a little bit of a backseat in the last couple weeks is concerning, but that's really been because those primary guards have come into what they were supposed to be when they were brought in, and he's mixed in some double digit games here and there, but this team is dangerous. They're absolutely a contender to win the whole thing. They're absolutely a contender to go back to back. You know, we'll see what happens in the SEC tournament, but I almost feel like with Joe with UConn losing and um, I feel like this team's probably pretty much slotted in for a one seed at this point, don't you think?
Yeah, I think they're the fourth one. I think if you have to do it now, I think it's the fourth one, just because of the bad losses UConn has taken. Um, they have a quad 2 loss, a quad 3 loss without Creighton and Marquette losses. Florida has 11 quad 1 wins. UConn only has 7. So last week we were talking, hey, it's UConn's the one seed for now, and now I think Florida just has kind of slammed the door shut with their own schedule and with UConn just kind of fumbling down the stretch.
Joe, I gotta say that I feel like the only way that's not what happens is we have Houston win the Big 12 tournament because that would probably include a couple of decent wins for them.
Mhm.
Um, but I still feel like we could be in a situation where Houston wins the Big 12 tournament, and if Florida wins the SEC tournament, they still end up the one seed. Florida does.
Yeah, and Houston, I would say, yeah, it depends on Florida would have to lose early in the SEC, and Houston would have to win the Big 12. You can maybe see Illinois, but they have 7 losses. You can maybe see Iowa State, but they've been struggling. So, and we know, Greg, that the committee does not take Sunday very seriously when they're making the brackets as much as they tell you
Oh
that they
no
do.
no 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 no, dude! We were told by certain people on Twitter
Yeah,
contingencies, but the bracket isn't released until whatever. Okay,
yeah,
that's
yeah. But yeah, Florida gets the win, and again, just might be right back on their path to a Final Four national championship type team. Next one up, Greg, a rivalry game, North Carolina at Duke. Obviously, a lot of the luster was lost when Caleb Wilson was out, and Duke dominated 76-61. Cameron Boozer, 26 points, 15 rebounds. He's been one of the guys, like he seems like he's pretty, like he says, I'm going to the NBA. Like this might be my last game at Cameron Indoor ever. Whereas like other freshmen are doing the old, oh, maybe I'll come back thing, which almost never works, or at least it never comes true. But great season for Duke. Great season for John Shire. I think he learned a lot. We talked about how some of his end of the game situations he's done, some of the X's and O's things he's done this year. I still don't know if this is like a team that has the guard scoring that I'm willing to take as national champion, but there should be on the top, like near the top of everyone else's list for couldn't take as a national champion because that defense has really locked it.
Yeah. The only other notes I want to add, I mean, this is a pretty commanding and dominant game, but no Patrick Gongba in this game.
Mm-hmm.
And Caleb Foster got hurt at some point. I can't remember if it was late in the first half, early in the second
Yeah.
half. Caden Boozer comes in, and I do feel like they while they both kind of play the point, I do feel like things have a different feel when Caden Boozer is running the point. I don't know if I want to say more free flowing. I don't know. It just I'm not going to say it's ideal for Caleb Foster to get hurt, but I don't know. There's just something about the offense that feels a little bit different. I don't know if maybe you can put your finger on what it is. I'm not even necessarily saying it's better. It just feels different. But them being able to kind of overcome those couple of things against a rival, yeah, I get it. No Caleb Wilson, but we saw what happened a couple of weeks ago when these two played. So, nothing is nothing is guaranteed when it comes to these two teams playing. Um, this is for sure on the top of the national title contender list. Despite the kind of nitpicky
Mhm.
um, analysis that we have, and I agree with you. It's the guard play is questionable, but I feel like there's enough there, and Dame Sar being more productive in the last couple weeks is definitely that's definitely helpful. Um, I think that provides them a little more versatility, um, especially with the defense that he's able to add. So we know this team's their defense is what's really good about them, but the offense when everybody's clicking, it's pretty darn good.
Yeah, and honestly, Greg, this is a team that we may not have many answers about their health when it comes to Selection Sunday because John Shire said he would expect, their health going in the NCAA tournament is the most important thing, and he said Gongba and Caleb Foster, he'd be shocked if they play in the ACC tournament. So they're probably still getting a 1 seed, and they're probably going to be like it's going to be one of those things. Me and you are going to fill out a bracket Sunday night next year, like we usually do, right? And we may not know. We honestly may not know who's going to be there and how that affects things. And that's like, I think they're a team that because the guard play was something we nitpicked, maybe it's not the biggest issue, like we said with LJ Cason's injury for Michigan. But like when you're talking about teams you might pick to win, that might be something that's in the back of people's mind, or it might be something that we have to consider is, I'm sure John Shire's not going to come out before Selection Sunday and say, oh, well, these guys are out for the season unless something's obvious. I don't think that's going to happen. So a lot of gray area this year with just the teams themselves, but even these injuries could be a little bit gray area too. Last game we'll recap from Saturday, Greg. We had BYU beating Texas Tech. Rob Wright had 27 points and 6 rebounds. Christian Anderson for Texas Tech had 23 points and 9 assists. This is a game for BYU that's important to get the win. We kind of wanted to see more marquee wins out of them. How much does it matter without JT Toppin for Texas Tech? They were playing well without him, so there's at least that. And then just on top of that, with Texas Tech, they did lose to TCU as well. So they've gone, from playing pretty well without JT Toppin to now like everything's kind of hit the ceiling at this point.
Yeah, I think this is probably what we expected to see once JT Toppin went down, and sure they got several wins in a row right after he won, but I think at some point the team is it's just they're just not as good without him. So they're gonna drop a game or two that they otherwise wouldn't if they had him. It does stink that it's two in the same week and it's right before the Big 12 tournament starts. Um, this is going to be a team that I'm going to struggle to decide what I want to do with them when the bracket comes out. I'm going to hope that maybe a second round matchup comes up that makes me think, okay, because of them dropping these games, they get seated lower than they should, and or would have if JT Toppin was still on the team, and they go up against someone that I just am so confident in that I don't have to really think hard about what I want to do with them. But you pegged it right, Joe, when we previewed this game last week. I think you said something along the lines of like you picked BYU. I know I picked Texas Tech and you picked BYU, and your explanation was something along the lines of, hey, I think BYU needs it more, or it means more, something that I can't remember the exact words you said, but yeah, I mean that compounded with you know just Texas Tech is. I mean those guys are probably tired, man. Like they were already playing so many minutes, and that was when that was when they had JT Toppin. I mean, you look at the box score from this game, and Donovan Atwell and Christian Anderson didn't come off the floor, and Jalen Petty, another freshman, played 35 minutes. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, some of their big guys that they were missing at times are healthy now that they didn't have before, but they ain't JT Toppin.
Yeah, that's a team we might bring up again. We talk about teams who can win it, but on the bright side, silver lining, Greg, Christian Anderson could become a March star if he just kind of puts his team on his back and leads them to some wins. And I'm not going to rule them out making a little run with him as the guy. Um, but yeah, it's unfortunate for both these teams that they have injuries and everything. And you mentioned like the rest, Greg. Maybe for Texas Tech specifically and some other teams that have tighter rotations, maybe this like it would be okay if you lose in the conference tournament earlier to get even more rest. But even like if somebody like the Big 12 ends on Saturday night, that gap from not playing Sunday, not playing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and maybe Friday, maybe even Thursday off, that could be like the biggest gap these teams have had outside of maybe a 1 week where they just played a weekend game and had no midweek game. So that might be impactful for some of these teams to get some you know some juice back in their legs. To be honest, that's something I think people not a lot of people think about is like, yeah, like there are teams who can go do the Kemba Walker thing and win the 6 games in 6 days or whatever, and um, go to March and kind of get a big run. But also maybe some of these teams need some rest, need some extra time to get their guys healthy too. All right, so let's go to Sunday. Greg, there's some other things Saturday, like George Mason beat St. Louis. St. Louis still seems like they're pretty solidly in the tournament, so they're fine, and some other things too. But let's go to Sunday to kind of update things. Nebraska did win in overtime over Iowa, so that's good for them to kind of make sure they're on the right track there. But the game we're going to go over, Greg, Michigan beats Michigan State 90-80. Yaxel Lendeborg had 27 points, leads them to the win. It was a game that was close in the first half. Michigan started pulling away in the second half. Jeremy Fears had another incident where he kicked, I forget who he kicked in the balls, Greg, but he kicked someone in the balls with the back of his foot. I think it was Cadeau with the back of his foot. So that's always good, and seems like there's no discipline there, but that's up to, I guess, Michigan State to figure out what to do. But just in case there's a phantom Big Ten suspension coming down for the Big Ten tournament or something, that's something to note. But yeah, Michigan's kind of, I think the most important thing, Greg, here is that they've shown they can win without LJ Kaysen, obviously the team that you mentioned last week, Greg, that they're not predicated on guard play. Cadeau just had 2 points. Burnett stepped up, though, 10 points. McKinney stepped up 12 points. Roddy Gale had 15 points. There were guys on the perimeter who stepped up. They have enough guys. It's just going to take an adjustment period in my mind to kind of make up for the loss of Kaysen, who was playing as like the best guard Michigan had the last 2 weeks before he got injured.
Yeah, I still am right where I was with this team. Last week when we talked about them, they did get. I think Cadeau was in double digits, and someone else was in double digits in their game earlier in the week that they kind of squeaked out against Iowa. But the guard play has never been this team's identity. It's the versatility of their bigs. It's the depth of their bigs. They have overall roster depth to where a loss of LJ Kaysen. Granted, it's not ideal. It means more playing time for Roddy Gale and Trey McKinney. Will Shetter is on the floor more than he otherwise would be. There's depth to this team. So it might not be, in an ideal world, you want this exact roster and in this exact kind of depth. No, sure, it's not that, but they're a pretty darn good team. With the only losses being to Duke on a neutral and Wisconsin in the middle of the season. And, we've obviously seen Wisconsin is pretty good. Duke's pretty good. So, this is one of those teams that we're nitpicking and if you could build a roster in a lab, it's not exactly what you want, but in real world, not perfect conditions, this is about as good as you can get. As far as top to bottom depth, maybe not being in the right places, I feel really comfortable with them, and I feel really comfortable with Arizona. They play but well on both sides of the ball. They have a lot of depth. They can get the job done in a lot of different ways. So I don't want to say they're much similar in ways other than that, and play style or anything. But I just in my level of comfort with both teams, and the reasons being, it's pretty much the same with both of those teams.
I would say as well. Yeah, it's just like with Michigan, it's like kind of like you said, like the bigs are good and they play a lot of minutes, and the guards they have different ones they can throw out there even without Kaysen. So that makes it like so it's like okay. And like honestly, if Dusty May does have the trigger to pull out Elliot Cadeau if he's turning the ball over, that would ease all of my worries. There are some games where he's left them in, and I get it, trying to get your guys to be trusted. But in a do or die situation, if he just says, "Hey man, you don't have it today," Trey McKinney's going to be in for you, or whoever's in for you at that point, that would ease my mind even more. So,
hey, there's no chance that Trey Burke has a year left that he could just come back for this week and for the next couple of weeks and play with them, right? I know we've tested the who can play, who can't play. I feel like if in an ideal world, that might be something they'd like at this point, right?
get ready for that injunction. It's coming tomorrow. All right, Greg, that's the recap for the week. Had a lot to get to there, but we got through it as fast as possible. Let's go to our teams that can win, Greg. There was a couple of teams we had on the chopping block. Among them were BYU, Gonzaga, Virginia, Purdue. I kind of added while we were talking Alabama and Texas Tech as other options. Do we want to take anyone off the list? Do we want to take off 9 teams next week and just get to 10 next week? I know we're on a time crunch when we're recording this now, so if we want to do that, that's fine too. If you have anyone you want to take off,
So
though, you can take them off.
I think it's probably safe to take off Carolina.
Okay.
I'm probably okay with that. They're still a decent team, but with the solid knowledge of what's going on with Caleb Wilson, it's just like they aren't what they were before, and even before, obviously they were flawed, and it was still a little bit of projection, and we were thinking they were going to get better, and they're clearly, yes, they have some other good freshmen in that team, and they have some good players, and uh, but it's just they're not on without him. They're not on the same level as some of these other teams that we still have left.
And even with them, Greg, they're 35th in offensive efficiency and 34th in defensive. That's not to say they couldn't jump into the top 25 and be like that Ken Palm team everyone says can win a championship. But getting both your offense and defensive efficiency to jump 10, 11 spots each, that's a tall order. So I'm with taking them off. That leaves us at 2 ACC teams. Duke and Virginia can win it. One Big East team in UConn. There's a lot of Big 10, Big 12, and SEC, and then Gonzaga as well. That takes us down to 18 teams. Is there anyone else you want to take off this week? I'm cool with if you want to take off more teams, if you want to let it sit for a week for conference tournaments. There's obviously the injuries with BYU and Texas Tech in consideration here. There's, you know, I would say our talks about Purdue and even Alabama in there, and then Gonzaga as well. We talked about last week is Braden Huff seems like he's not going to come back this year. They said he's definitely not coming back before the NCAA tournament, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, like, this is one of those situations where if it was like, all right, we have to do it today, I'd probably say, all right, we take off Virginia, we take off Texas Tech, we take off Bama, Purdue, Nebraska, and that gets us close, and then we have to, cut, maybe even one more. So what would that? So I just listed Virginia, Purdue, Texas Tech, Nebraska, Bama. That's 5.
Yeah.
So we would have 3 to cut, and then it'd be really difficult. But again, I don't want to do that. And then it's like there's a
Well,
world where the ACC is not very deep. If we look up and Virginia wins the ACC championship, like that, that's the thing. Is like how much does that change our view of Virginia, especially if that title? I don't have the bracket in front of me, but if that title game comes against Duke, that or at least it would be the semifinal. I don't know if that one data point when we've said, hey, they kind of had a light schedule and they've got done what they needed to, but I just don't know how
well,
much my opinion of them is going to change. I don't know.
yeah, I think we can leave it at 18 and get it to next week. And as a reminder for next week's episode, what we usually do is we just fill out the bracket and like our recap is going through our bracket and be like, oh, well, UConn won the Big East and whatever it is. We usually do it that way. There's not like a long recap because there's just too much basketball and conference tournament week to recap. We just go towards the bracket. So what we can do is before we pick our bracket next week, we can get this list down and see if we have any disagreements before we fill out our brackets, which could help or hurt our brackets of our debate too. That'll help be very influential. But at least teams that we have on the chopping block, 5, 6, 7 teams, whatever it is, and that can get us at least close to that number of 10. All right, so let's get to our picks for the other conference tournaments. Now, as a reminder, we did the conference tournaments that have started. Some have ended already earlier. Greg has a pick right. He got Tennessee State winning the OVC right. That is Nolan Smith, former Duke guard, coaching them. I have not gotten one right. It's been fun. And Belmont lost in the MVC. Greg, they were favored. There's been some other high seeds.
Connecticut State lost really early.
Yeah, and
Uh,
Navy got upset today on a buzzer beater where the clock didn't start, and I don't that was kind of weird, but uh,
Thomas lost in a heartbreaker towards the end of that game.
yeah, yeah. So let's get to our picks for the other conference tournaments. There's some smallest conferences, but all the big conferences will be here, Greg. Let's start it off with the American. Now, I remember preseason show, Greg. I said I liked USF, and they were a team that I wasn't really sure they were going to be this good, but 23-8. Tulsa is the only other team with a record that's comparable, 25-6 in the conference. Wichita State's 13-5. They're tied with Tulsa for second. But after that, it's UAB at 11-7, and everyone else is 500 or below.
Brian Hogston coming over from Arkansas State had a pretty good year. Got to say, maybe he's on the short list of guys that move up. We've obviously seen people leave that particular school, USF, and have success and whatnot. But um, I'm going to pick USF. I don't really have a reason to pick anybody else, and they pretty much ran the table in the conference in the regular season, and I'm just going to go with that.
Yeah, I like the team. Enos and Isaiah Nelson, really good players. I'll have to go get that clip of what I said before the season about them, but they're a team that stands out above the rest of the conference. And there's no like Memphis is not good this year. Wichita State, some teams that they're just not the same as they usually are. It should be USF still to lose here. Let's go to the A10, Greg. St. Louis has been the team dominating the headlines for the A10 this year. They're ranked in the top 25, probably drop out after losing to George Mason. VCU's been pretty good, 15-3. They are tied for the A10 right now at the top of the A10. St. Joe's 13-5, Dayton 12-6. You can get a little bit frisky and go a little bit lower if you want, but those are the teams that are kind of in the running for the A10.
So VCU is a bubble team, and I looking at their side of the bracket. I feel like they make it at least to the title game, and then I start looking at the other side, and it's like, well, Flu is they're even though they've been sliding, Joe. I got to think they're still in at least, regardless of even if they win. If the one thing we didn't talk about in our recap, they lost pretty badly to George Mason over I think that was on Saturday. That is the 5 seed in the tournament, but it was like a 30-point loss. These losses have come kind of all bunched up. Not something you like to see. That for that reason, I'm going to pick VCU to win the A10 tournament. But I don't think my thoughts on St. Louis as a whole are shaken. I just think when we're thinking, who's hot and who's going to win their conference tournament, it makes me want to pick VCU. But I don't think my opinion on SLU in general has changed much. I still think, like their ceiling was probably always Sweet 16. I still think that's their ceiling. Maybe the floor is a little lower just with the kind of downward trend. But overall, good year for the program. Josh Schertz is going to end up somewhere else next year unless everybody tries to lowball him or something. So good year for them. But I'm going to pick VCU to win the tournament.
I'll stick with St. Louis. Trey Green, former Xavier player, shooting the lights out of the ball. Robbie Avila. Be fun to watch him in March. We got robbed of that last time. I just want to make sure they lock up their bid. They're 99.9% in, Greg, like you said. They're like 28th in the net right now, 27th in the net. It would be, even if they lost in the first round of the A10 tournament, it would be absolutely shocking if they missed. But I wanted them to seal the deal and get in after Indiana State got screwed a couple of years ago.
I'm probably with them where I am with Miami. Like they win their first game of their conference tournament. They're like, we're gonna be in downtown Indianapolis storming the NCAA. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, a team that we all want to see a mid-major conference. Like this is like, I don't know. This is star potential. It is. This is what we want to see. It's not. We don't want to see Auburn.
If you put your tinfoil hat on, Joe, and you say they're trying to talk expansion to 70 whatever teams, they go, oh well, you guys want to see these teams in? We got to expand the tournament. When we all know darn well that it's just going to mean Auburn gets in over SLU if we expand the tournament.
Absolutely, that's how it goes, and that's something they're gonna keep on pushing. But you know what I'm saying when I'm watching these bubble teams, Greg? Please don't put some of these teams in the tournament if they're from a big conference. Some of the smaller conference teams deserve it. Heck, I'd even take a Belmont, whose resume is not as good as some of these big conference teams, over some of the big conference teams that have more quad one wins. I don't know. That's just how I feel. All right, so let's go to the ACC tournament, Greg. I'm going to be quick here. I'll go first here. Duke. There's some concerns with the injuries to Gongba and Caleb Foster, and I'll have to work through that. But even so, running through the conference all year, North Carolina takes the hit with Caleb Wilson. That might have been my pick if Caleb Wilson was healthy and back, but I don't think anyone else has the juice unless Duke is just so much worse without those two players.
Yeah, you're right. The only reason this is even a question is the health of Gongba and Caleb Foster. But even if you tell me for sure both of them don't play in the ACC tournament, like still head and shoulders above the competition. So for now, I have no reason to. I wouldn't be shocked if neither of them play and then they drop in the title game or the semifinals. But you know, it's still, I have no reason if I'm throwing down $100 to pick anyone other than Duke.
That's what I'm thinking too. All right, let's go over to the Big 12, Greg. There are 5 teams who are in the top 25 this week. Obviously, that's going to change by Monday, but Arizona, Houston, Kansas, Texas Tech, and Iowa State would be some of the favorites in this one. Who you going with?
I'm going to pick Arizona. Was going to try and choose between one of the double bye teams. So if my memory serves me, that's Arizona, Houston. It's not Iowa State. Iowa State's the 5 seed. Who am I for? There's two more teams that have the double.
Kansas, and Texas Tech.
Kansas and Texas Tech. We have our reservations about all those other teams, or Kansas and Texas Tech. So it's pretty much for me. And again, it's March. Weird things happen. Look up, and Arizona State wins the conference tournament just to be funny because that would be a Bobby Hurley thing to do. But uh, with the way the teams have been playing and how confident I am in the roster, I'm picking Arizona.
I am too. Like I kind of wanted to take Houston, but they kind of had their struggles the last couple of weeks, and the inside presence not being there is not a good matchup for Arizona, who has too many inside presences. So those are my two guys. Like I said a couple weeks ago, those were the two teams I was considering for national championship picks. I'm not sure about Houston anymore as much, but that was also my Big 12 conference pick was between those two teams, and I just think Arizona has the matchup there. All right, Greg. So the Big East Conference is up. St. John's won the conference. UConn's going to be the number 2 seed in this. Villanova is the only other team above 500. They're 15-5. So that's great for a conference.
Yeah. Do you think Dan Hurley knows that they have to play games in consecutive days? It's kind of like almost an MTE like environment. I'm wondering if he's aware of that. If he might just like pull his team out of this event. I don't know, but I'm still going to pick them. Hopefully they actually play. This is for anyone who doesn't know. This is a joke about his commentary on some of the MTEs over the last couple of years, which is just hilarious. But um, I'm going to pick UConn, but it's pretty much picking between one of two teams, and I'm not super confident in this pick, but I don't know. I just like this is where I feel like the wind's blowing for me right now with the Big East.
Yeah, I think there is an argument that you could pick St. John's, and they split the series, right? But like, I'm the last game they played against each other was so bad for St. John's. There might be like no coming back for that. There might be a mental block. I'm going UConn, and I'll trust Dan Hurley to get this done. It's more about the next tournament. I'm more worried about them for. I think they're still very much in play for this. Next one up, Greg, the Big Ten tournament. There's obviously a couple teams in this that are in the contention for them. Michigan's the clear favorite. Michigan State's been playing well. There's some teams that could use a big boost to their resumes. Who are you going with in this conference?
I'll go with Michigan. They get the job done this afternoon. They again are one of those couple of teams where I feel pretty confident in several facets between the depth, the ability, the talent. Um, I just this is probably going to turn out to be the conference tournament just with as many good teams as are in it that maybe sends us a shocking result on day 2 of the conference tournament or something. But regardless of how many good teams are in this particular conference tournament, I still think Michigan comes out on top.
Think so too. I think if I was going to pick someone else, it might be Illinois. If I was going really dark horse, maybe Wisconsin, just because of the guard play. But like, it's going to take Michigan losing themselves. Like, I know that's goes without saying, but like I think Michigan more so not playing their game is what's going to be gets them out of the tournament rather than anything else these teams do. It seems like they're a step ahead of everyone in this conference, and it's a lot of shock here for us, Greg. But when we have teams like Michigan and Arizona and Duke who have dominated all year, what are we supposed to do? So Michigan for me as well. We'll go over to the Big West, Greg. This is one that has UC Irvine at 15-5, Hawaii at 14-6, Cal State Fullerton, Cal State Northridge, and UC San Diego are all tied with 12 wins in conference.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of gut feeling on this one. I'm just going to take the top seed and take UC Irvine.
I went with my heart here, Greg. Isaac Johnson leads Hawaii in scoring, 13.7 points per game. I'd love to see Hawaii in the tournament. I think it's fun. They also do a no switch defense, which I think doesn't sound like a good idea to me, but a no switch defense, I think that's fun. It's different. Let's see it in the tournament. We'll go over to the CUSA, Greg. This is a conference that has been pretty much run by Liberty for a long time. Western Kentucky's been good too. Those two teams are in contention. Sam Houston State also in contention. Louisiana Tech, Middle Tennessee as well.
Joe, this is actually a quirky bracket. Have you looked at this one?
Yes, I can't describe it off the top of my head, but it is definitely one of the more different ones.
So the top two teams play in the quarterfinals on Wednesday, and they're playing play-in winners from Tuesday. Then they get a day off where they watch the other quarterfinal games of the 4-5 seed and the 3-6 seed. So I with not only do they get a bye in the first round, but they get a day off that the other quarterfinal teams don't get. With that being said, I feel like there's really no reason to pick anyone other than the 1 or the 2 seed. I'm looking at Sam Houston State. There's not a lot that jumps out at me. So I'll just pick Liberty, but that for sure means we're in for the 12 seed winning this conference tournament.
Yeah, I went Western Kentucky the three in this one. Tegan Moore scores 18.4 points per game. This is, I mean, to be quite honest, Greg, I did these picks last week because I get my conference tournament picks in before all of them start. They dropped 2 games this week, which makes their chances worse. But we're riding. We're gonna go with Tegan Moore. We're gonna go with Tegan Moore and his 18.4 points per game, and I think they can win it. Ivy League is up next, Greg. They are obviously the different type of conference tournament where only 4 teams make it. I would say Yale and Harvard, like most years. Princeton's down, but Yale, Harvard, and Princeton are usually the contenders, and Yale and Harvard are the two big contenders this year.
So I'm gonna take Yale. Um, I think the one thing that gets me is, I'm looking through schedules and trying to get a data point that means something to me. And I see that Yale beat Akron, and that's like a data point that gives me a relevant amount of not that Akron is awesome, but it kind of gives me a relevant amount of data to make okay. That tells me what this team is. Oh, they're the 1 seed in this 4-team tournament. There's nothing that sticks out at me for Harvard, so I'll pick Yale.
Yeah, Nick Townsend for Yale is really, really good, Greg. Yale and Harvard split the season series in very close games. Yeah, they both won on the road in 2-point game and a 1-point game. I'm going Harvard. Robert Hinton, 17.1 points per game. He's an absolute bucket. I'll take him. Nick Townsend is as well, but I'm going to take Robert Hinton and Harvard Crimson. We'll move it over to the MAC conference, Greg. This is the one that we have talked about with Miami, Ohio. Probably did enough to make the NCAA tournament. I wouldn't totally trust that they're going to get in just because that's how the selection committee has worked with favoring the big conference teams. The other contenders are Akron and Kent State. Akron was 17-1, only loss was to Miami, Ohio, and Kent State was 14-4 in conference.
Yeah, there's just part of me that feels like Miami, they have been playing with fire, not like necessarily on purpose, not like giving games away, but like it's been under the gun, very close a lot lately. I feel like they get picked off. Akron's the other good team, in the conference that poses a threat. So give me 2-bid Mac and give me Akron.
I'm going Akron as well. Tavani Johnson, Tabari Johnson, 20.2 points per game. Also have the Mahaffey brothers, Greg. Remember Evan Mahaffey from Ohio State? He's also on the team. Doesn't score as much, but he is a key player on this Akron team that's going to help him out as well. Move it over to the MEAC conference, Greg. This is the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. The teams that are in contention, Howard 11-3, Morgan State 10-4, Norfolk State and NC Central 8-6, and then South Carolina State was 7-7, with other teams lagging behind 500.
Dude, picking a conference that I know zip about. I mean, I'm looking through these schedules, and Morgan State at one point this year was like, they were like 2-15 at one point. That's crazy that they end up the 2 seed in this uh conference. That's insane. Um Gosh, dude. Like I have no direction on this one of where to go. Gosh. I'll just pick the 1 seed. I'll just pick Howard. I have nowhere else to go.
Yeah, I'll take Norfolk State. The pedigree's there. Anthony McComb, 17 points per game. They did test themselves non-conference. They played at Baylor. They played at Arizona. Did not go well. They're 15 and 16 overall. But that we see those teams sometimes go under 500 in conference play and then make the tournament. So or under 500 in overall play and they're 8 and 6 in conference. So it could happen. Uh, Next one up, Greg. Let's go for the Mountain West. Now, this is a interesting tournament. There are some potential at-large teams here. We have Utah State, San Diego State, New Mexico are the teams that are still in play for an at-large spot in the tournament. San Diego State, New Mexico have fallen a little bit, so maybe they're more on the outside of the bubble right now. Might want to get some wins here.
Yeah, again, just looking for relevant data points that mean something to me, and I see a stretch where New Mexico beats Santa Clara and VCU, so I'll take the Lobos to win this one.
I don't mind that pick, Greg. They Utah State, I think, is the best team in this conference, and they're pretty solidly in. They've lost like 3 of their last 5, and not always to the best teams. So I'm staying away from Utah State in this one. I think they can still rebound and be a dangerous team in the tournament, but just need some time. I'm going San Diego State. I talked about them in the preseason. They have a lot of talent back from some of these teams, from the teams the last couple of years. Reese Dixon Waters is leading the team in scoring. Miles Bird came back. Magoon Guath has not had the season we quite expected. He started off hurt, and I mentioned that, there's a reason why they didn't really play well at the start. So they probably need to win to get in, so I'm going to go them. They have talent, it just hasn't all come together this year. We'll move on down to where we at, Greg? The WAC is, or no, the SEC is the next one, and we'll have the WAC is the last one. So the SEC, Greg, are you taking a win?
I'm gonna take Florida. Um, Obviously, the beginning of the season there were some question marks, but I think they've kind of silenced all those, given us the answers that we were looking for. It's March, anything can happen, but I'll take the team that looks like they're playing the best ball and really coming into their own.
Yeah, I'm going Florida too. Picked them preseason, so I'm going to stick with them. The guards really came on. Xavier Lee, one of my favorite players for Princeton last year, in the front court all stayed, and I loved him, and I'm just going to stick with it. But if I were to take someone else, Greg, I probably would have tried to take Arkansas, but Darius Acuff didn't play against Missouri this weekend, and I'm just, if he's not playing, I don't want to take a risk like that. So I'm definitely taking Florida. All right, last one, Greg. We have the WAC. This is a conference that has had some fun conference tournaments, albeit late at night a lot of times. And, not the most teams in the conference, Greg, but Utah Valley, Cal Baptist, Utah Tech are some of the best teams in it.
Yeah, again, just I don't know, trying to pick something that makes sense. Uh, Yikes! I got nothing again on this conference. I'll just This is wonderful podcasting. Um, I'll just take the 1 seed. I'll take Utah Valley.
All right, going chalk. I took Cal Baptist. They're the 2 seed. They played some of the power conference teams close. Maybe not the best power conference teams, but that experience matters. They lost to Colorado by 8. They lost to Utah, obviously on both of them on the road by 6. They beat Oregon State this year, which is cool. They beat UC Irvine. We talked about them as maybe winning the Big West. Dominique Daniels scores 22.6 points per game. That's fun. We'll take Cal Baptist for this one. So those are our picks, Greg, for the conference tournaments. You've already, like I said earlier, gotten the OVC right. Tennessee State won. Otherwise, we're looking for some more tournament winners here in the next couple weeks. Any final thoughts before we sign off here?
Joe, I think something else of note just happened for smaller conference basketball. If I did that just happen? Did Charleston just lose?
I'm looking right now.
Well, they did lose. I don't know if that was just now, but I'm just seeing tweets about it now.
Yeah, the CAA,
Uh,
yeah.
so that's my pick for the CAA.
And
Uh,
mine's out.
and yours.
Yeah,
So that there you go. Hey, you
Mark
watch the
that.
sport all year. Granted, I don't watch a ton of CAA ball and have no idea what's going to happen.
Yeah, and the other favorite, UNCW, Takayo Siddle. We talked about him as a name up and coming. They're out, so it's going to be some chaos. And like I said, Greg, there's already been chaos. Belmont's out of the MVC. We have Fins up from the NEC. LIU going into the tournament. Tennessee State was a team that was pretty good in the OVC, but they're not like a perennial tournament team. Navy was upset in the Patriot League. It's been fun. This has been a fun conference tournament slate so far, and I think the big conferences, we both leaned a little bit more chalk, but that's kind of the way the sport is. But I wouldn't be surprised to see some more shockers go on this week, Greg. It's gonna be a fun week.
Yeah, and LIU obviously, Joe, they knew they were in the tournament before they even played the final game. Do they still have yet to play that final? When I'm looking, I'm
I
trying to
don't
see.
think, yeah, I don't think they've played it yet. They play. You're right. They play Mercyhurst. Mercyhurst is still on its way up for the transition period. Stupid rule. We know that, but they're in. So I think it's I,
I'm trying to see when the heck it is.
everyone.
Again,
Yeah.
we talked about this last week when we were
Oh,
kind of
it's March 10th. So it's Tuesday at 7. Um,
yeah, there it is.
but yeah, everyone's already said like LIU's in, and yeah.
Right. Yeah. So everyone is reporting LIU in. So if you're looking and you're looking at a schedule and you're like, wait, what? They haven't won. That's why. And we talked about a few of these teams that I wasn't even sure which ones were still technically in that 4-year transition and which ones weren't. And I feel like we get an example of this. I don't know what every maybe 5-6 years
Hmm.
since there's been a lot of teams coming up to Division One, kind of in those bottom tier conferences where things like this tend to happen. But yeah, so there's a present day example for you right there. LIU hasn't even played the conference title game yet, but they are already in the tournament. So fins up.
There you go. Fins up. Greg, first time in the tournament for Queens University. That's fun. The Royals. That's a cool thing. And then mentioned last week, High Point is a team that has a lot of love. Cameron Fletcher's back on the team. I don't know what the heck happened with that situation, but if you're looking for a smaller conference team to pull some upsets off, I think High Point might be a popular team, so maybe it won't happen. But 30-4 overall, have some talent, obviously from the bigger conferences, and new coach this year, Alan Huss went back to Creighton, and they just got the job done. It's kind of a cool story.
Cameron Fletcher, 17 points and 19 rebounds today. I think High Point is happy to have him back, whatever the heck was going on.
For sure. All right, that is the show for the week, Greg. My turn to remind everyone to like and subscribe to the Game House YouTube channel to see the video of this. Also, like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and tell your friends too as well as we get to March. Next week, we will be back on Selection Sunday to fill out our brackets. We'll do our 10 teams who can win the championship. We'll fill out our brackets, which usually takes a decent bit of time, but it's always fun as we get a official bracket and have some fun times with March. For now, thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next time.